threat classification, no interception solution, nothing. At 4:47 in the morning, 40 drones crossed the Lebanese border into Israeli airspace, flying at an altitude of 12 meters above ground level, slower than a commercial quadcopter, quieter than a passenger car on an empty highway. They carried 5 kilograms of high explosive each. They navigated not by GPS, not by radio link, not by any signal that the most sophisticated electronic warfare suite in the Middle East could detect, jam, or spoof. They navigated by sight, optical guidance. Machine vision algorithms processing terrain imagery in real time, matching what the onboard camera saw against preloaded topographic maps with sub-meter accuracy, adjusting flight path 40 times per second without emitting a single detectable electromagnetic pulse. The first drone struck an Israeli military communications relay outside Kiryat Shmona. The second hit a vehicle staging area at Shlomi 3 seconds later. The third flew through the open doorway of a ground floor logistics depot in Metula at walking speed, detonated inside, and collapsed the structure. Over the next 11 minutes, 37 more impacts followed across a 60-kilometer front spanning the entire northern border. Military positions, observation posts, patrol vehicles, antenna arrays, sensor nodes, targets selected with a precision that indicated months of pre-strike intelligence preparation. Targets hit by weapons that the most expensive air defense architecture on the planet could not see. When the IDF's Northern Command finally pieced together what had happened, the operational picture that emerged was not merely embarrassing, it was doctrinally devastating. Israel's air defense network, the layered shield that every strategic calculation in Tel Aviv depends upon, had just been rendered functionally irrelevant by a weapon that costs less than a used car and fits in the back of a pickup truck. Hezbollah did not break through Israel's air defense. It flew underneath it, around it, through the gaps that nobody in the Israeli defense establishment believed existed, and it did so with a technology that makes every assumption about aerial threat detection obsolete overnight. The age of radar-dependent air defense just met its nemesis, and the nemesis does not show up on any screen. Before we go further, if this analysis is providing the depth, the technical honesty, and the strategic clarity that mainstream coverage refuses to deliver, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave your perspective in the comments below. Your engagement is what keeps this channel operating at full independence. The story we are breaking down tonight changes the defense calculus of every nation on earth, and you need every minute of what follows. To understand the magnitude of what Hezbollah just demonstrated, you need to understand what Israel's air defense network actually is, what it was designed to do, and why its failure against this specific threat category represents something far more consequential than a single tactical setback. Israel operates the most densely layered missile defense architecture on the planet. Iron Dome handles short-range rockets and mortars. David's Sling intercepts medium-range ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 provide exoatmospheric and high-altitude interception against long-range ballistic threats. Patriot batteries supplied by the United States fill additional engagement gaps. Together, these systems are integrated through a centralized battle management network that synthesizes radar data from dozens of ground-based installations, airborne early warning aircraft, and space-based sensors into a single unified threat picture. The total investment in this architecture exceeds $40 billion across 3 decades of development, procurement, integration, and operational testing. It has been validated in combat against Hamas rockets, Hezbollah missiles, Iranian ballistic salvos, and Houthi cruise missile attacks. It is the shield behind which Israeli society functions, the invisible guarantee that civilians in Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Jerusalem can go about their lives while missiles arc toward them from multiple directions simultaneously. That shield was designed to defeat one category of threat: objects that fly fast, fly high, and emit electromagnetic energy that radar can detect. Ballistic missiles following predictable arcs. Cruise missiles with radar altimeters and active seekers. Rockets on calculable trajectories, fast, high, loud, and electronically visible. That is the threat model. That is what $40 billion was engineered to stop. What crossed the Lebanese border this morning was none of those things. It was slow, it was low, it was silent, and it was electromagnetically invisible. not stealthy in the way that an F-35 is stealthy, which still reflects some radar energy and can be detected by sufficiently capable systems. Invisible in a more fundamental sense. A drone navigating by optical terrain matching emits no radar signature, no radio frequency signal, no infrared beacon, no communication link. It is a piece of carbon fiber and explosive moving through space with no more electromagnetic presence than a bird. Israel's $40 billion shield was not designed to see birds, and tonight the birds carried warheads. Four questions that every air defense planner in Israel, every radar engineer at Raytheon and Rafael, every general officer in the Pentagon's Missile Defense Agency, and every defense minister across NATO is asking right now with increasing urgency. First, how did Hezbollah obtain a drone with optical guidance capability sophisticated enough to navigate autonomously at 12 meters altitude across complex terrain without any external signal input? Optical terrain matching navigation at this level of precision requires machine vision algorithms, high-resolution preloaded terrain databases, and onboard processing power that Western intelligence assessments have consistently placed beyond the technical reach of Hezbollah and, until very recently, beyond the deployed capability of Iran's drone program itself. Either those assessments were catastrophically wrong, or Hezbollah received this technology from a source with capabilities that force a fundamental reassessment of who is supplying what to whom in this conflict. Which is it? Second, Israeli media confirmed that of the 40 drones launched, only a small number were intercepted. The remainder struck their targets and, in the words of the Israeli public broadcaster Kan, caused heavy damage. If Israel's layered air defense network, the densest and most combat-tested in the world, achieved an interception rate below 20% against a slow, low-flying drone swarm, what does that mean for every other nation's air defense capability against the same threat? If Iron Dome cannot stop this, what can? Third, the new drone reportedly carries an optical guidance system resistant to electronic warfare, can maneuver inside buildings, carries up to 5 kilograms of explosives, and travels dozens of kilometers. Kan described it as one of Hezbollah's most advanced aerial systems. This is not a modified commercial quadcopter. This is a purpose-built military weapon system with capabilities that took years to develop and test. Where was this development happening? How was it concealed from the intelligence apparatus that is supposed to track exactly these kinds of capability advances? And how many of these systems are already deployed across Lebanon's launch infrastructure? Fourth, and most strategically consequential, if optical guidance drones that emit no detectable signal can penetrate Israeli airspace with near impunity, what happens when this technology is scaled? 40 drones cause significant tactical damage across the northern border. What happens when the number is 400? What happens when optically guided drones are sent not against military positions in the border zone, but against infrastructure in Haifa, against the Kiryat military headquarters in Tel Aviv, against the Dimona nuclear facility in the Negev? If Israel's defense network cannot detect these weapons at the border, it cannot detect them over the center of the country either. The physics of invisibility do not change with geography. Stay with us, every question gets answered, and the implications go far beyond the northern border. To fully understand what penetrated Israeli airspace this morning, you need to understand the specific technical architecture that makes this drone fundamentally different from every loitering munition that has been used in combat before. Because the distinction is not incremental, it is categorical. This weapon operates on a different principle of navigation than anything Israel's defense network was designed to counter, and that principle is what makes it invisible. Every military drone and missile system currently in widespread operational use navigates by one or more of three methods: GPS satellite positioning, inertial navigation using internal gyroscopes and accelerometers, or active radio frequency guidance, where the weapon emits or receives electromagnetic signals to determine its position and heading. All three methods have a common characteristic that air defense systems exploit: they are detectable. GPS receivers emit processing signatures that sophisticated electronic warfare systems can identify. Inertial systems accumulate drift errors over distance that make them insufficiently accurate for precise terminal guidance without correction from an external signal. Active guidance systems radiate electromagnetic energy that radar warning receivers and signals intelligence platforms can detect, classify, and track. Israel's layered defense architecture is built around detecting these signatures. The radar network looks for radar cross-sections and motion. The electronic warfare network listens for electromagnetic emissions. The signals intelligence infrastructure monitors for communication links between drones and their operators. Together, these systems create what defense planners call a detection mesh, a multi-spectrum surveillance architecture designed so that any threat that is visible in any part of the electromagnetic spectrum will be detected by at least one layer. The drone that Hezbollah deployed this morning operates outside that mesh entirely. Its optical terrain matching navigation system is passive. It receives light through a camera lens. It processes what it sees through an onboard neural network. It compares the visual scene to a preloaded database of terrain imagery. It calculates its exact position based on the correlation between what it sees and what it expects to see. And it does all of this without emitting a single photon of electromagnetic energy into the environment. From the perspective of Israel's detection mesh, this drone does not exist. It is not reflecting radar in a way that distinguishes it from ground clutter at 12 meters altitude. It is not emitting radio frequency energy that the electronic warfare network can detect. It is not communicating with an operator over a link that signals intelligence can intercept. It is a small carbon fiber airframe with a minimal thermal signature flying at a speed and altitude where it blends into the ambient noise floor of the electromagnetic environment. The machine vision system at the heart of this capability deserves specific technical attention because it represents a level of autonomous navigation that Western analysts have been tracking in Chinese and American military programs, but had not attributed to the Iranian Hezbollah technology ecosystem until today. Optical terrain matching navigation works by continuously comparing a real-time camera feed against a stored database of geo-referenced imagery. The system knows what the terrain below the flight path should look like at every point along its route. As the drone flies, its camera captures the actual terrain. A convolutional neural network processes the captured image and matches it against the stored reference. The difference between what the camera sees and what the database predicts tells the navigation computer its exact position, heading, and altitude with an accuracy that rivals military-grade GPS in benign conditions and dramatically exceeds it in a GPS-denied environment. The computational requirements for this are significant but not insurmountable. Modern embedded processors, even those manufactured at technology nodes available to nations outside the Western semiconductor supply chain, can run inference on trained neural networks fast enough to provide navigation updates at 30 to 40 hertz. The camera hardware is commercially available at resolution levels sufficient for terrain matching. The terrain database can be assembled from commercially available satellite imagery, augmented by operational reconnaissance. The critical technical challenge is training the neural network to maintain accurate navigation across varying conditions. Lighting changes between day and night. Weather alters the visual appearance of terrain. Seasonal vegetation changes modify reference features. Shadow angles shift throughout the day. A robust optical navigation system must handle all of these variations without losing position accuracy. This requires training data sets of enormous size and diversity, thousands of images of each navigation waypoint under every relevant condition. How Hezbollah or its Iranian technical sponsors assembled these training data sets for terrain inside Israeli territory is a question that Israeli intelligence is urgently pursuing this morning. Commercial satellite imagery provides one source. Reconnaissance drones operated over months or years along the border provide another. Human intelligence assets with camera access to Israeli terrain provide a third. The precise collection methodology matters less than the conclusion. Someone assembled a comprehensive visual database of Israeli terrain with sufficient resolution and coverage to support precision optical navigation across a 60-kilometer front. That collection effort required time, resources, and a strategic patience that indicates this capability has been in development for years. The operational execution of this morning's strike demonstrates a level of tactical sophistication that goes beyond simply launching drones and hoping they find targets. This was a coordinated multi-axis penetration designed to exploit specific identifiable weaknesses in the Israeli air defense network's low-altitude detection capability. The architecture structure of the attack reveals that whoever planned it possessed detailed knowledge of where Israel's radar coverage thins, where terrain creates shadowing effects that block low-altitude detection, and where the seams between overlapping defense systems create momentary gaps that a slow, low-flying object can exploit. The 40 drones did not all cross the border at the same point. They entered Israeli airspace across multiple penetration corridors simultaneously, each corridor selected for its terrain masking characteristics. The Lebanese-Israeli border region is not flat. It is a landscape of ridgelines, wadis, valleys, and agricultural terraces that create complex radar shadow zones at low altitude. A drone flying at 12 meters above ground level through a wadi that runs perpendicular to an Israeli radar installation is physically invisible to that radar. The radar beam cannot bend over a ridgeline. The physics of electromagnetic propagation create a hard shadow zone below the terrain feature, and within that shadow, anything can move undetected. The IDF has addressed this low-altitude gap historically through a combination of observation posts, electro-optical sensor towers, and patrol activity. Human eyes and camera systems can detect what radar cannot at very low altitudes. But observation posts have coverage arcs that do not overlap perfectly. Camera systems have range limitations in darkness. Patrol schedules have gaps. And critically, all of these supplementary systems require a human operator to recognize, classify, and report what they see before an engagement response can be initiated. Against a single drone, this detection to response timeline is manageable. Against 40 drones arriving simultaneously across a 60-kilometer front at 3 in the morning, the system is overwhelmed, not by the sophistication of any individual threat, but by the parallelism of the attack. Each observation post sees one or perhaps two objects. Each camera system captures a contact that requires classification. Each report enters a command chain that must process, deconflict, prioritize, and assign. By the time the human-dependent detection and response system has processed the first contacts, the drones have already reached their targets. This is the fundamental asymmetry that the drone swarm exploits. The attacker system is autonomous. Every drone is making its own navigation and targeting decisions independently, simultaneously, without any centralized bottleneck. The defender system is human-dependent. It requires people to detect, people to classify, people to authorize, people to engage. The attacker operates at the speed of silicon. The defender operates at the speed of cognition. In a simultaneous multi-axis attack, cognition loses. The interceptions that did occur are instructive. Israeli forces reportedly intercepted a small number of the 40 drones. The systems that achieved these interceptions were likely short-range air defense assets, gun-based close-in weapon systems, or man-portable systems operated by soldiers who physically saw or heard the approaching drones and engaged them with direct fire. These are not scalable solutions. You cannot position a soldier with a visual line of sight to every potential drone approach path across a 60-kilometer border. The interceptions were lucky encounters, not systematic defense. There is a critical secondary dimension to this morning's attack that amplifies its strategic significance beyond the immediate tactical damage. The optical guidance system on these drones is inherently resistant to the electronic warfare countermeasures that represent Israel's primary tool for disrupting enemy drone operations. Against GPS-guided drones, Israeli electronic warfare can jam or spoof the GPS signal, causing the drone to lose navigation and crash or divert. Against radio-controlled drones, Israeli systems can jam the command link between the operator and the drone, severing control. Against drones that use radar altimeters for terrain following, Israeli electronic warfare can generate false altitude returns that cause the drone to fly into the ground. Against a drone that navigates by looking at the terrain with a camera and processing what it sees through an onboard neural network, none of these countermeasures apply. There is no GPS signal to jam. There is no command link to sever. There is no radar altimeter to spoof. The drone's navigation is entirely self-contained. The only input it receives from the external environment is light, and you cannot jam light. The implications of this for Israel's electronic warfare doctrine are severe. The IDF has invested heavily in electronic warfare capabilities specifically because it represents the most efficient way to neutralize large numbers of incoming drones without expending expensive interceptor missiles. A single electronic warfare system can disrupt dozens of GPS-guided drones simultaneously.